Picture this. You're sitting at a family dinner when someone you thought you knew shows their true colors in the cruelest way possible. Have you ever witnessed a moment so shocking it changed everything you believed about someone? Magnolia Chin Richardson, 28 years old, had built her entire career around protecting vulnerable people as a social worker in Columbus, Ohio. She believed in family, respect, and standing up for those who couldn't defend themselves. But nothing prepared her for what happened that Thanksgiving evening. The dining room buzzed with conversation as 3 generations gathered around Delilah Richardson's antique oak table. Delilah, 72 and widowed, had spent 3 days preparing this feast. Her weathered hands shook slightly as she served the turkey she'd been basting since dawn. Scarlett, Maggie's sister-in-law, sat like a queen at the head of the table. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her manicured nails gleaming as she picked at her food with obvious disgust. "This gravy is too salty, Mother Richardson," Scarlett announced, her voice cutting through the warm chatter. "And the stuffing tastes stale." Maggie watched Delilah's face crumble. The elderly woman had been cooking for 60 years, yet she apologized quietly, reaching for Scarlett's plate. "Don't touch it," Scarlett snapped, standing abruptly. Her chair scraped against the hardwood floor like nails on a chalkboard. "Actually, you know what? This table is for family. Get outside." The room fell silent. Even the children stopped eating. Delilah's fork clattered to her plate. I don't understand." "You heard me." Scarlett's voice was ice cold. "Outside. Now." Maggie's wineglass trembled in her grip as fury coursed through her veins. What would you do if you watched someone humiliate the person who raised your husband? Would you stay silent to keep the peace, or would you risk everything to do what's right? The silence stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Uncle Harold cleared his throat awkwardly. Cousin Marie stared at her mashed potatoes. Even Maggie's husband Jasper sat frozen, his mouth hanging open. But Maggie couldn't just sit there. She set down her glass and walked to Delilah, whose entire body was shaking. "Come on, Mom," Maggie whispered, using the name she'd called Delilah since her wedding day. "Let's get some fresh air." Outside on the porch, Delilah collapsed into the old wooden swing, tears streaming down her cheeks. The November wind cut through their dinner clothes like a knife. "I'm so sorry you had to see that," Delilah whispered. "She's been like this for months. Ever since she married Marcus." "Months." Maggie knelt beside the swing. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Who would believe me? She's sweet as pie when others are around. And Marcus, he thinks the sun rises and sets with her." Through the dining room window, Maggie could see the family continuing their meal as if nothing had happened. Scarlett was laughing now, playing the perfect hostess in someone else's home. "She told me I should be grateful she lets me live in my own house," Delilah continued. "Said I'm getting too old to take care of myself." Maggie's blood boiled. This was elder abuse, plain and simple. But before she could respond, she heard Scarlett's voice floating through the window. "Don't worry about the old woman. Soon enough, we'll have her somewhere she can't bother anyone anymore." Have you ever stumbled upon a conversation that revealed someone's true intentions? Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who smile while they plan your destruction. Maggie pressed closer to the window, her heart hammering against her ribs. Inside, Scarlett was talking to Marcus in hushed tones while the rest of the family chatted loudly. "The Sunset Manor has an opening next month," Scarlett continued. "Once she's there, we can start handling her finances properly. This house alone is worth $400,000. Marcus nodded slowly. "But what if she fights it?" "She won't have a choice. I've already spoken to that lawyer downtown. We just need to document a few more incidents of her confusion." Maggie's hands turned to fists. Delilah wasn't confused. She was sharper than most people half her age. This was a calculated attack on a vulnerable woman's independence and dignity. "I've been putting little things in her food," Scarlett whispered. "Nothing dangerous, just enough to make her dizzy sometimes. Tired. The doctor already thinks it's her age." The words hit Maggie like a physical blow. Scarlett wasn't just emotionally abusing Delilah, she was poisoning her. "Smart thinking, babe." Marcus kissed Scarlett's cheek. "Mom will be better off in a home anyway." And we'll finally have the money to buy that lake house. Maggie stumbled backward, her mind racing. As a social worker, she'd seen this pattern before, but never in her own family. Elder abuse often started with isolation and manipulation, then escalated to financial exploitation. But she'd never seen it combined with deliberate poisoning. Through the window, she watched Scarlett refill Delilah's water glass from a small bottle she'd hidden in her purse. The same glass Delilah would drink from when she came back inside. Maggie's phone buzzed with a text message that made her blood run cold. What if the person you trusted most was secretly working against someone you loved? Sometimes the betrayal comes from inside your own home. The text was from Jasper. Where are you? Scarlett's asking questions about your work with elderly clients. Says she's worried about Mom's memory. Maggie stared at the message, pieces of a horrifying puzzle clicking into place. Scarlett wasn't just acting alone. She was gathering information, building a case to make Delilah look incompetent. Honey, what's wrong? Delilah noticed Maggie's pale face. Nothing, Mom. Just work stuff. Maggie forced a smile, but her mind was spinning. She needed evidence, documentation, proof that would hold up in court. Over the next week, Maggie used every resource at her disposal. Her colleague in the Financial Crimes Unit ran a background check on Scarlett Palmer, her maiden name. What they found made Maggie's stomach turn. 3 previous relationships, all with older men who had money. 2 restraining orders that were later dropped. 1 suspicious death of an elderly neighbor in Scarlett's old apartment building. This woman is a professional, Detective Sarah Martinez explained over coffee. She targets people who have something she wants, usually money or property. The pattern is always the same: charm, isolate, control, exploit. But she married my brother-in-law. That's a long con, even for a scammer. The best ones play the long game. Your sister-in-law has been planning this for years. Maggie's phone rang. Delilah's trembling voice came through the speaker. Maggie, honey, I don't feel so good. I keep getting dizzy, and my stomach. The line went dead. When Maggie burst through the back door of her office, she found Jasper waiting by her desk with a grim expression. Have you ever had to choose between keeping your marriage peaceful and protecting someone you love? Sometimes the people closest to us become our biggest obstacles to doing what's right. We need to talk, Jasper said, closing her office door. His usually gentle face looked strained and tired. Jasper, I need to check on your mom. She called and... She's fine. Scarlett took her to the doctor. He sat down heavily. Maggie, what are you doing? The question hung in the air like smoke. Maggie studied her husband's face, searching for any sign that he might already know the truth about his sister. What do you mean? Scarlett says you've been asking questions about her, running background checks. She's upset, and frankly, so am I. Maggie felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. Jasper, there are things about Scarlett you don't know. She saved my mother's life today. His voice was firm. Mom collapsed in the kitchen. Scarlett called 911, rode in the ambulance, stayed with her for 4 hours. The doctor said it could have been a stroke if they'd waited any longer. Every word felt like a slap. Scarlett was so good at this game that she'd turned her own poisoning into a rescue mission. Listen to me carefully. Maggie leaned forward. Your sister is... My sister is what? A criminal? Maggie, you're starting to sound paranoid. I have proof, Jasper. Financial records, background checks, witness statements. Scarlett has done this before. Jasper stood up, pacing to the window. Even if that were true, and I'm not saying it is, Scarlett makes Marcus happy. Mom likes her. She's part of our family now. She's slowly poisoning your mother. The words exploded from Maggie's mouth before she could stop them. Jasper spun around, his face a mixture of shock and anger. That's enough. I won't listen to you destroy my family with these wild accusations. Your family? Maggie's voice cracked. What about me? What about us? Jasper's next word shattered something fundamental between them. If you can't accept Scarlett as part of this family, maybe you need to decide what's more important, your conspiracy theories or your marriage. Have you ever felt completely alone, even when surrounded by people who should support you? Sometimes your greatest ally comes from the most unexpected place. 3 days passed without a word from Jasper. He slept in their guest room, left for work early, and came home late. The silence in their house felt like a living thing, growing bigger each day. But Maggie refused to give up on Delilah. She found the elderly woman sitting in her kitchen, staring at a cup of tea that had gone cold hours ago. Dark circles shadowed Delilah's eyes, and her hands trembled more than usual. "How are you feeling, Mom?" "Tired all the time."
"Dizzy."
"The doctor wants to run more tests." Delilah's voice was barely a whisper. "Scarlett thinks I should consider other living arrangements." Maggie sat down across from her. "What do you think?" For the first time in weeks, fire sparked in Delilah's eyes. "I think I've lived in this house for 43 years, and I'll be damned if some blonde Barbie doll is going to push me out of it." Despite everything, Maggie smiled. "There's the fighter I know." "Maggie, I need to tell you something. About the night Thomas died." Delilah's voice dropped even lower. "Scarlett was here that evening. She brought soup for his flu. He got so much worse after eating it." The room seemed to spin around Maggie. Thomas had been Delilah's husband, Jasper's father. He died suddenly from what doctors called complications from pneumonia. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" "Who would believe me? And I couldn't prove anything. But lately, with how sick I've been getting." Delilah's eyes filled with tears. "I think she's been practicing on me." Outside, a car door slammed. Through the window, Maggie saw Scarlett walking up the front path with a covered dish and that same sweet smile. But this time, Maggie was ready to fight back. What would you do if you discovered evidence that could destroy someone, but using it might cost you everything? Sometimes justice requires sacrifices that seem impossible to make. "Hello, girls." Scarlett breezed through the front door, like she owned the place. "I brought Mom some homemade chicken soup. The doctor said she needs to keep her strength up." Maggie watched as Scarlett set the bowl in front of Delilah, that familiar sweet smile never wavering. But now Maggie noticed things she'd missed before, how Scarlett's eyes stayed cold even when she smiled, how she positioned herself between Delilah and the door. "That's so thoughtful," Maggie said carefully. "Mind if I try some? It smells delicious." Something flickered across Scarlett's face. "Oh, it's a special recipe. Probably too bland for your taste." "I insist." Maggie reached for the spoon. Scarlett's hand shot out, knocking the bowl to the floor. Soup splashed across the kitchen tiles in a steaming mess.
"Oops.
How clumsy of me." But Scarlett's voice had an edge now. "I'll have to make another batch." As Scarlett cleaned up the mess, Maggie used her phone to discreetly photograph everything: the unmarked container Scarlett had brought the soup in, the way she was careful not to let any of it touch her own skin. Later that evening, Maggie met Detective Martinez at the police station with her evidence. Financial records, background checks, witness statements from Delilah, and now photographic documentation of suspicious behavior. "We can't arrest her based on suspicions," Martinez explained. "But we can start building a case. The problem is she's smart. Really smart. So what do? We make her think she's winning. Let her get overconfident. People like Scarlett always make mistakes when they think they're untouchable." Maggie's phone buzzed with a text that made her heart stop. It was from Scarlett. "Jasper told me about your little investigation. Drop it now, or I'll make sure you lose everything that matters to you." Have you ever been in a situation where everyone around you refuses to see the truth? Sometimes standing up for what's right means standing completely alone. The next morning, Maggie woke up to an empty house. Jasper's clothes were gone from their closet, and a note on the kitchen table explained everything in cold, formal language. "I'm staying with Marcus and Scarlett until you come to your senses. This obsession is destroying our marriage." At work, things got worse. Her supervisor, Janet, called her into a meeting with HR present. "We've received some concerning reports about your behavior," Janet said, sliding a folder across the desk. "Harassment complaints. Abuse of your position to run unauthorized background checks." Maggie's stomach dropped. Inside the folder were official complaints signed by 3 people, all claiming she'd been using her job to stalk and harass Scarlett Palmer Richardson. "This is all lies," Maggie protested. I was investigating elder abuse against a family member. That's a conflict of interest at best, harassment at worst. The HR representative's voice was flat and professional. You're suspended pending a full investigation. Walking out of her office that day, Maggie felt like her entire world was crumbling. No job. No husband. And now everyone in her family thought she was crazy. But the worst part came that evening when she drove by Delilah's house. Through the living room window, she could see Scarlett serving dinner to Delilah, playing the role of the perfect daughter-in-law. Marcus and Jasper sat at the table, laughing at something Scarlett said. They all looked so happy, so normal, like a perfect family. Maybe she really was losing her mind. Her phone rang, startling her from her thoughts. It was Detective Martinez, and she sounded panicked. Maggie, get to Mercy General Hospital right now. Delilah's been admitted to the ICU. When someone you're trying to protect ends up fighting for their life, how far would you go to prove what really happened? Sometimes the truth is literally a matter of life and death. The hospital corridors smelled like disinfectant and despair. Maggie found the family gathered in the ICU waiting room, Marcus pacing by the windows, Jasper slumped in a plastic chair, and Scarlett dabbing at her eyes with tissues. What happened? Maggie demanded. She collapsed after dinner, Marcus said without looking at her. Just started convulsing. The doctors think it might be a stroke or seizure disorder. Scarlett looked up with red-rimmed eyes. It happened so suddenly. 1 minute she was fine, laughing at my stories, and then she dissolved into fresh tears. But Maggie noticed something the others missed. Scarlett's purse sat open on the chair beside her, and inside was the same small bottle she'd seen at Thanksgiving dinner. The one she'd used to doctor Delilah's water. I need to see her, Maggie said. Family only, a nurse explained gently. Are you a relative? Before Maggie could answer, Scarlett spoke up. She's not family. She's been harassing my mother-in-law. Security should probably escort her out. The betrayal cut deep, but Maggie had more important things to worry about. She slipped away from the waiting room and found Detective Martinez in the hallway, talking quietly with a doctor. The blood work shows traces of digitalis, Martinez whispered. It's a heart medication, but in large doses, it can cause exactly what happened to Mrs. Richardson. Digitalis poisoning? Someone's been giving it to her regularly, in small amounts. Tonight's dose was nearly fatal. The detective's face was grim. We're treating this as attempted murder. Through the glass doors of the ICU, Maggie could see Delilah hooked up to machines, fighting for her life. But she could also see something else that made her blood freeze. Scarlett was walking toward Delilah's room, carrying a small cup of water and wearing latex gloves. What do you do when you're watching someone try to finish what they started, and no one else can see what's happening? Sometimes being right doesn't matter if you can't prove it fast enough. Stop her, Maggie shouted, but Detective Martinez was already moving. They burst through the ICU doors just as Scarlett reached Delilah's bedside. The small cup in her hand contained what looked like water, but Maggie could see powder residue at the bottom. Step away from the patient, Martinez commanded, her hand moving to her weapon. I'm just bringing her water, Scarlett said innocently. The poor dear must be thirsty. Ma'am, put the cup down and step back. For a moment, Scarlett's mask slipped. The sweet, caring daughter-in-law disappeared, replaced by something cold and calculating. Then the mask snapped back into place. Officer, I don't know what this woman has told you, but she's been stalking my family. She's obsessed with destroying my marriage to my husband. But Martinez wasn't buying it. The cup, please. As Scarlett reluctantly handed over the water, Martinez used a small testing kit from her pocket. The liquid turned bright blue. Positive for digitalis. Scarlett Palmer Richardson, you're under arrest for attempted murder. The words echoed through the ICU like a gunshot. In the waiting room, Maggie could hear Marcus and Jasper demanding to know what was happening. But as the handcuffs clicked around Scarlett's wrists, she turned to Maggie with a smile that would haunt her dreams. You think you've won? You have no idea how deep this goes. The money's already gone, transferred to accounts you'll never find. And there are others, so many others you'll never be able to save. As security escorted Scarlett away, Maggie realized this wasn't the end of the nightmare. It was just the beginning. What happens when you think you've caught the monster, only to discover they've been running a much bigger operation? Sometimes one arrest opens the door to crimes you never imagined. Within hours of Scarlett's arrest, she was gone. Bail posted by an expensive lawyer, charges mysteriously reduced to reckless endangerment instead of attempted murder. The Digitalis-laced water had somehow disappeared from evidence. "She's got connections," Detective Martinez explained, frustration clear in her voice. "Money talks, and she's been stealing it for years." But the real shock came when Maggie checked Delilah's bank accounts. Every penny was gone. The house had been signed over to a shell company. 43 years of savings, pensions, and assets had vanished overnight. "How is this legal?" Maggie demanded. "It's not." But she had power of attorney, forged documents, and a very good legal team, Martinez replied. "She's been planning this for months." The trail led to something much worse. Martinez's investigation revealed a network spanning 3 states. Elderly victims in nursing homes, isolated widows, vulnerable seniors, all targeted by the same sophisticated operation. "Your sister-in-law wasn't working alone," Martinez explained. "This is organized crime. Professional elder abuse on an industrial scale." Phone records showed Scarlett had been in contact with nursing home administrators, crooked lawyers, and even some doctors. They'd created a pipeline for finding and exploiting vulnerable seniors. Maggie's blood ran cold when she saw the next name on the victims list. Mrs. Eleanor Patterson, 84, recently moved to Sunset Manor after her loving, new caregiver convinced her family she needed professional care. The same nursing home where Scarlett had planned to send Delilah. Scarlett was already hunting her next victim. Have you ever realized that stopping one criminal meant uncovering an entire web of evil? Sometimes saving one person means you have to save them all. Eleanor Patterson reminded Maggie of Delilah, sharp, independent, but trusting the wrong person. Her caregiver was a young man named Derek who had all the same warning signs as Scarlett. "He's so helpful," Eleanor explained when Maggie visited her at Sunset Manor. "Takes care of all my financial paperwork, so I don't have to worry about it." Through her social work connections, Maggie discovered Derek had already transferred $50,000 from Eleanor's accounts. The nursing home was billing for services never provided. Eleanor's own daughter lived across the country and had no idea what was happening. "This isn't random," Detective Martinez explained during their meeting. "They target specific types of victims. Isolated seniors, families that live far away, people with substantial assets but no strong support systems." Working with FBI financial crimes investigators, they mapped out the entire operation. 12 states, over 60 victims, millions of dollars stolen. Scarlett had been one of their top performers. She was recruiting others, Agent Sarachin explained, teaching them the methods. "Your mother-in-law wasn't just a victim. Delilah was a test case for training new criminals." The evidence was overwhelming, but they needed to catch the network's leaders. And there was only one way to do it. "We need Scarlett to lead us to them," Martinez said. "But she's smart enough to know we're watching her." Not all of us, Maggie realized. They don't know about Eleanor's daughter. Or about the other families who haven't been contacted yet. Agent Chun smiled grimly. Time to set a trap. But as they planned their operation, Maggie's phone buzzed with a message that changed everything. "Meet me at the old warehouse on 5th Street. Come alone, or Eleanor dies tonight." Would you walk into an obvious trap if it meant saving an innocent person's life? Sometimes the most dangerous choice is also the only right choice. The warehouse district at midnight looked like something from a horror movie. Empty buildings stretched into shadows, broken streetlights casting strange patterns on cracked pavement. Maggie's hands shook as she parked her car, but she couldn't let fear stop her now. Inside the abandoned warehouse, a single light bulb hung from the ceiling. Scarlett stood beneath it, no longer bothering with her sweet smile. Her real face was cold, calculating, and absolutely ruthless. "You couldn't just leave it alone," Scarlett said. "You had to keep digging." "Where's Eleanor?" "Safe. For now." Scarlett circled Maggie like a predator. I actually admired your determination. You would have made a good partner in this business. I'll never be anything like you. Scarlett laughed, the sound echoing off empty walls. You think you're so righteous. But you destroyed your own marriage, lost your career, and for what? To save some old people who are going to die anyway. Because it's the right thing to do. Right and wrong are luxuries for people who don't need money. Scarlett's voice turned vicious. I grew up in foster care, bounced between homes where nobody wanted me. These old people lived full lives, had families who loved them. They don't need their money anymore. So, you decided to steal it? I decided to survive. And I got very good at it. Scarlett pulled out a small device, a police scanner. Your detective friends are 3 minutes out. But that's not enough time to save Eleanor. From the shadows, Derek emerged, dragging the elderly woman between him and another man Maggie didn't recognize. Eleanor was conscious but clearly drugged, her eyes unfocused and scared. Here's what's going to happen, Scarlett continued. You're going to call off the investigation, drop all charges, and disappear. Or Eleanor becomes another tragic nursing home accident. But Scarlett had made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated Maggie's determination and overestimated her own control. Maggie smiled, pulling out her phone. You're right about one thing. The police are 3 minutes out. But you forgot about the FBI. The warehouse exploded with light as federal agents surrounded the building. Scarlett's face went white as she realized she'd been outplayed. This ends now. What does justice actually look like when the criminals are finally caught? Sometimes winning doesn't feel like you thought it would. The courtroom was packed with victims and their families. Scarlett sat at the defendant's table, her expensive lawyer whispering urgently in her ear, but the evidence was overwhelming. 63 confirmed victims. Over $4 million stolen. A criminal network that had operated across 12 states for nearly 5 years. When the judge read the sentence, 25 years to life, Maggie felt hollow instead of victorious. Justice was served, but so many people had been hurt. So many lives destroyed. Delilah had survived, but the poisoning had damaged her heart permanently. She'd moved in with Maggie after losing her house, spending her final years dependent on others instead of living independently like she'd planned. Jasper had eventually apologized, but their marriage never recovered. Some betrayals cut too deep to heal completely. They divorced quietly 6 months later, remaining friends but nothing more. The nursing home network was shut down, but not before dozens more seniors were victimized. Eleanor Patterson recovered physically, but never mentally. She spent her remaining years afraid to trust anyone. It wasn't enough, Maggie confided to Detective Martinez after the sentencing. We stopped them, but we couldn't undo the damage. That's the hardest part of this job, Martinez replied. Justice doesn't erase the harm. It just prevents future harm. Maggie returned to social work, but everything felt different now. She'd seen how easily the system could be manipulated, how vulnerable people could be exploited by those they trusted most. Then, exactly 1 year after Scarlett's arrest, someone knocked on Maggie's door. A young woman with tears in her eyes and a story that sounded painfully familiar. Have you ever wondered what happens after the story ends? Sometimes your greatest victory isn't stopping the villain, it's inspiring others to fight back. My name is Rebecca Chin, the young woman said, settling into Maggie's living room. I read about your case in the newspaper, about how you saved your mother-in-law from that woman. What can I do for you, Rebecca? It's my grandmother. She's 86 and lives alone in Portland. Last month, she hired a companion to help around the house. This woman has been so sweet, so helpful. But yesterday, Grandma called me crying, saying money was missing from her account. Maggie's heart sank. The cycle was continuing, just with different players. The companion's name is Jennifer Walsh. She has all the right references, a clean background check, and my family loves her. But something feels wrong. As Rebecca described the situation, Maggie heard echoes of her own story. The isolated elderly person, the charming caregiver, the slow financial manipulation disguised as help. What do you want me to do? Teach me. Show me how to fight back. I can't do what the police can do, but I can learn what you learned. Over the following months, Maggie became something she'd never planned to be: a teacher, a mentor, a guide for families facing elder abuse. Word spread through social media, support groups, and community centers. She started getting calls from across the country. Adult children worried about their parents. Seniors suspicious of new friends who seemed too interested in their finances. Social workers who needed advice on complicated cases. 2 years later, Maggie opened the Richardson Foundation for Elder Protection, named after Delilah, who had passed peacefully the previous spring. The foundation provided resources, training, and support for families dealing with elder abuse. You know, Detective Martinez said at the foundation's opening ceremony, "Scarlett probably thought she destroyed your life when she got you suspended from work." "She did destroy that life," Maggie replied, watching families learn how to protect their elderly relatives. But sometimes destruction creates space for something better to grow. Through the window, she could see Delilah's old oak tree, now planted in the foundation's memorial garden. Its roots ran deep, its branches reaching toward the sky, providing shelter and strength for generations to come.